individual fabric items every day, each one different, on 15 different substrates, and with an average size of about 1 meter. So if you think of Andreas's presentation this morning as big image, I think you would think of Spoonflower as the other one, about as small as you can get. Our mission has a couple of important parts. The first is that we're very devoted to craft. So empowering makers to make stuff. The scope of the technology that we're focused on is digital textile technology. And we're focused on delivering that in as automated a way as we can via the web. So up to now, Spoonflower has, for the most part, focused on two things. Getting more sophisticated in sort of from the printed fabric moving backwards towards cotton growing out of the dirt. So different fabrics, different automations, all the steps up to the print. And we haven't done that much in terms of the steps that go closer to the customer to help make their process of design easier. The tools of digital textile design have evolved and are magnificent, but they're not on the web. The tools of pattern making as well are brilliant, but they're also not on the web. And so one of the things that we wanted to try to experiment with is, can we get some of these powers that require kind of a PhD in speaking Adobe, and try to expose some of them to everybody else who doesn't have maybe all of the skills that we saw Marco demonstrating earlier today. So there were a bunch of different ideas about the ways to do this, but the demo I'm going to give in a minute is really kind of a mixture of two things. One was I have been messing around with the Canvas element and HTML and seeing how you could use 3D on a web page to give people a preview of a surface design on a texture on a person. And separate from that, one of my colleagues, Kelly Walsh, came in one day and she's wearing a dress, and she showed me that this dress was basically, she'd taken an online open source pattern and she'd put it into Photoshop, and she'd taken another layer and she'd put a design into repeat underneath it and sent that off as a design inside Spoonflower, and then she made the dress. So she's standing there in this dress, and you know, so we were asking each other, is there a way for us to bring these two capabilities together in some kind of a mashup? And what problems would that really solve for people? So just some basics about making. I'm not a sewist. I tried to sew this shirt. There were two. I'm not wearing the one I made. It's someplace else. Sewing from patterns, and sewing in general, but sewing from patterns is not the easiest thing in the world. When you first look at a pattern, it's intimidating. You don't know exactly what all the symbols are and how do I read this. If you're brand new to the sort of maker movement, you've got to figure out what all these things mean. You have to cut all the pieces down, and you're surrounded by all the different pieces. You have to pin them. The whole process is more than a little bit scary, and it keeps people from really engaging. That's a hypothesis. I don't know if it's actually true or not. But we decided we'd go and try to find out. So the project that we took on is called Sew Projects, and right now it's in a kind of a friends and family trial. One of the products of which I'm actually wearing, where we're trying to see if we can make this mashup actually work and what kinds of things it would work for. So Spoonflower is a marketplace, and there are 250,000 designs in the marketplace, all different kinds of designs. It's also a place where an individual can upload their own surface design. So you would either upload one or choose a design in the marketplace. You would choose your project. Right now, we've mocked up a shirt and a tote, so an accessory and an item out of apparel. And those are our two kind of test platforms. You've got your design, you've chosen your project, you get a preview in 3D, and then in that setting, perhaps customize the design a little bit, and then order it up, and it gets printed, delivered to you, cut, sew, and wear away. The approach that we're hoping to take with this is that each of the different kinds of sew projects is itself kind of a comment thread, is a social community, so that you have the possibility of doing something in a kind of a stair step. If I'm a brand new a maker, and this is really intimidating, there are projects that are going to be easy for me. And then I can step to the next and step to the next, and each project has a community around it that can help me through the process if I run into issues at some point along the way. So actually, if we can switch to the demo. Okay, and there's a fancy button. There we go. If you can click basic t-shirt. So again, we mocked up a few things. This is, again, a proof of concept demo. So there's another version we're working on that this won't get you all the way through to a checkout. But if we can go ahead and click on this pattern. So the first step is I can see the cut and sew pattern rendered in 3D on the body and actually see how it positions on the shirt itself. And if I want to, I can, with sliders, reposition the pattern on the shirt. We don't have it in this version, but you could conceivably change the resolution so that the pattern is scalable, larger, smaller. All our patterns are raster, so you wouldn't be able to scale it up to a big image size, but up to a certain size and then down as small as you'd like to go. And then in this stage, you can also consider what kind of options. So if we can just click on the long sleeve right there. So conceivably, this is very, very simple, but there might be a dress that can be embellished in 12 or 15 or 25 different ways with this or something, etc. In this setting, you'd be able to configure what it is you intend to sew. And if you can go ahead and click here. There's a little story. We had a theme of bicycles in this morning. So I am a fanatic for recumbent bicycles. Think Holland, not Italy, very flat, and velomobiles. And so the design that I asked for is one with from patents from the early 20th century for recumbent bicycles. So I'm wearing bicycles basically. So Caroline created this. What we just needed to do was validate that it would, in fact, turn into a shirt that somebody would want to wear. And here it is. This is what somebody would get if they purchased this. If they purchased this as a kit. One of the hardest parts of this is making the preview actually rendered the way it sews at the seam, where the flower goes over the shoulder. Does it go over the shoulder for real, or does it just go over the shoulder in the preview? If we can, go ahead and swap back to PowerPoint, and now I'm on my way into to landing. So step ahead one. Okay. So the tool chain that that we built has got two sides, and it really is you know, the preview in the digital world and the tools for making fabric prints in the physical world. On the left, we start with a cut and sew pattern, and we take that into, we looked at a bunch of different tools, and ironically, Marvelous Designer is a tool that's really about creating things for working in the online world, in the gaming world. It's not a fashion tool unless, you know, that's where your fashion lives. But it worked great. It was a great tool, and we were able to export from it a .obj file and import that into another tool, which is called Blender. Blender is an open source 3D rendering and editing environment. And inside Blender, we were able to take it and unwrap it and make it into a flat 2D, like what you saw on the fabric. Inside Blender, because it's an open source tool, somebody decided that they would sort of create an export hack that allows you to send this 3D model out, and in another tool called 3.js. 3.js is a JavaScript library that did the rendering on the canvas on the page that you saw a moment ago. And then finally, inside the web page itself, you've got the model in 3.js, and you use JavaScript to modify it with the sliders and so on and so forth, the way you would modify any other web page using JavaScript. And you know, there wasn't an add to cart button, but the JavaScript would also take all the attributes that you've chosen that you see in that preview and save them. So that's all kind of preview time. The other side is print time, and this is basically a Photoshop story. We spend an inordinate amount of energy scripting Photoshop to get all the stuff that we need done to work. And so the way this starts in Photoshop is with a Photoshop pattern that we take into layers, one for each size. And then we make the space that's going to be printed transparent. We insert a step and repeat in the right spot with the right DPI based on the XY placement that the consumer chose. And then we flatten those two layers, and that's what we print. So that was the utility that created the fabric. So just some observations about what this sort of means for us. The objective of this is to kind of meet three of the most important sort of motivations of a consumer in making online. The first one is to give you a real immersion in an experience as a consumer. The second is to allow you to tinker with it. And the third is to allow you to socially interact with others. And so this richness and immersion and tinkering, and then I've got something I've made and I can share it with everybody. Even if I never make a shirt, I can share that I've made this, whatever it ends up being, addressed with a button here and so on and so forth, and just share it via Instagram. You know, a 3D preview of what you're proposing to make. All of this without the barriers of, I don't need somebody to help navigate. I don't need an expert. I don't need a brick and mortar store. It's something that I can create a community where some members of the community are in Australia, and some of them are in Italy, and some of them are in Connecticut. And if the community around making that first dress or the first shirt is all these different places, there's no friction in the sharing between them, other than they all have to pay FedEx to get it to them if they're going to sew together. The accessibility is kind of a core part of our mission. What we are trying to do is take digital textile technology and make it less complicated, so that really anybody can become a maker, and you know, all they need is either a little social assistance, the right set of instructions or support, the right inspiration, and a price that's not ridiculous, a price that anybody can conceivably pay and consider to be a good value for the creative thing they're going to make. Another key part of this is, and I've already mentioned this, but it's worth mentioning twice, Spoonflower is really built as a community. We don't spend basically anything to market the business. The intention is to participate in a benevolent way in creating conversations that support making, and that's effectively the marketing that we do. And then the last kind of dimension of this is humans are kind of strange. They want to be creative, but maybe not too creative. Maybe that's a little too creative, it's a little out there. You want to add just enough of yourself so that you can identify with your tribe, but maybe you're not that comfortable being the leader of a new direction or a new tribe. I think the person who's about to follow me might show us a few new directions, but this allows you to decide how creative you want to be when you express yourself. So I just want to close with an observation and a question. Well, a very short story, an observation and a question. In 1994, 95, I had a job I'm a nerd, as a consultant, writing code. And we saw what was happening, you know, HTML and JavaScript and Netscape, and it was pretty cool. And I quit my job. I started a company to train people in HTML and JavaScript and how to be a webmaster, if anybody remembers that. And when we talked about the web then, if you just look at the words that are in bold, those are exactly the same words that we used. So here's my question. You know, maybe what we are seeing is the beginning of something where the media, instead of the web, is textiles. Yes? Thank you very much.